What has teeth like steak knives, claws of steel, and is 6 tons of pure terror? T-Rex, the ultimate killing dinosaur. This team of diggers has found more T-Rexes than any other. As they probe inside its skull, they find what's on its mind. Dinosaur hunters in Argentina have discovered a killer that's even bigger than T-Rex. But was it as ferocious? A bone bed in Wyoming reveals a tender side to the grizzly allosaurs. They may have had family values. A dinosaur digging family has unearthed the baby they call Bambi. But watch out, this baby bites. It's a raptor. The awful allosaurs, the nastiest raptors, the most cunning carnivores. Meet the dinosaurs' killer elite. In the desolate badlands of South Dakota, a team of diggers searches for something nearly as precious as diamonds. The bones of Tyrannosaurus Rex. Everyone's heard of T-Rex, but almost nobody has found one. Despite a century of searching, no more than 24 specimens have ever turned up. But this team has found more T-Rexes than anyone else. They're from the Black Hills Institute, a private fossil hunting operation headquartered in Hill City, South Dakota. Since 1990, they've uncovered 5 T-Rexes, including 2 of the most complete and largest skeletons anyone has ever seen. Three years ago, they found the first fragments of a T-Rex they nicknamed Duffy. This year, they're back to recover the rest of this once mighty meat-eater. Tyrannosaurs were armed with slashing claws and jaws bristling with 6-inch serrated teeth. They belonged to a group of meat-eating dinosaurs called theropods, meaning beast foot. Common features were a 2-legged stance and 3 main toes on their hind feet. Some were as small as chickens, but an adult T-Rex weighed in at 6 tons, a bit more than a modern bull elephant. They lived near the end of the dinosaur era, the late Cretaceous, from 80 to 65 million years ago. On T-Rex's trail is a team led by dinosaur hunter and Black Hills president Neil Larson, now a veteran of 5 T-Rex digs. Finding Duffy's bones is proving difficult. After 3 seasons, only 25% of the skeleton has been unearthed. Many of the large leg and backbones are still missing. So is much of the head. This year, Larson hopes their luck will change.
Well, there's a number of skull bones that we have not yet found for Duffy. We don't know if we found the brain case or the very front part of the nose of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Those would be extremely important to find because it would finish giving Duffy a face.
Dinosaur skeletons are rarely found with the bones lying in their proper places, next to each other. More often, scavengers would drag off pieces of the decomposing dinosaur, scattering them over the landscape. That's what dinosaur hunter Terry Wentz suspects happened here.
Duffy was scavenged upon and scattered through a large area with a kind of a pocket of bones down here by where these folks are working. And then we found scattered skull bones way off in the distance. Now what we'd like to find is maybe where the animal actually died, because most of those bones are the lighter bones. We'd like to find the heavy pelvic bones and the leg bones.
With no way of telling where the rest of Duffy lies, or even if it still exists, Wentz's crew starts by scraping away layers of topsoil. They watch carefully for any sign of fossils. A trained eye can tell fossils apart from rock by their distinctive color and texture. If the crew spots one, they'll start digging by hand. It's demanding work. Soon the team uncovers an exciting fossil, but not a dinosaur. They found the remains of a giant sequoia tree. It testifies to how drastically the parched badlands have changed since T-Rex's day, when they were covered by a lush forest. Deep in this forest, 68 million years ago, a Tyrannosaur died. Scavengers moved in, ripping away its rotting flesh and scattering its bones. Eventually, the earth covered them up, locking them underground for millions of years. Today, rain, snow, and wind have eroded the ground, and the bones lie just beneath the surface, waiting for the Black Hills crew to uncover them again. Eventually, the team spots a tooth, and then they discover the very fragment they were hoping to find, the bone from Duffy's front jaw.
This is an important bone because this is the part that held the first four teeth of the face of Tyrannosaurus Rex. It also held the opening for the nostril of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. But another reason it's so important is because this bone holds the first 4 teeth of the T-Rex that would bite into its prey. This is the front of the skull tooth. What's really neat about this tooth is that the tooth broke off in life, and then it kept using it even after it chipped it and even polished the face of it. It probably broke its tooth fighting another Tyrannosaurus Rex or biting into the bone of another dinosaur.
Digging up Duffy's bones is just the first step. Now they must be taken back to the Black Hills lab, where they'll be cleaned and studied. Everyone in Hill City, South Dakota knows how to find Black Hills Institute. Locate the sign with a burger-eating dinosaur and look across the street. You'll see a Tyrannosaur skull guarding the entrance. Most of the time, Hill City is a quiet town, but in 1992, it became the center of one of the hottest dinosaur disputes of all time. On May 14th, a dozen FBI agents, the National Guard, and local police carried out a surprise raid. They'd come to seize Black Hills' most valuable discovery, the largest and most complete T-Rex ever found, nicknamed Sue. The government claimed that Pete Larson, Neil's brother, dug up Sue in 1990 from public land without permission. They confiscated the bones and locked them up at the South Dakota School of Mines. Larson denied the charge. Hill City residents were up in arms about the government's actions and protested. It didn't help. Pete Larson went to trial. He was acquitted on the charges related to Sue, but was handed a brief sentence for failing to fill out customs forms concerning imported money. In 1997, Sue was turned over to Sotheby's for auction.
And I begin with a bid of $100,000, Deputy.
Black Hills tried to buy her back, but was outbid. They couldn't match the record $7.6 million she was sold for.
Fair warning then, $7,600,000. Up here. $7,600,000.
Though there's been nothing quite like the battle over Sioux, the hunt for T-Rex has often stirred up controversy and attracted colorful characters. Men like Barnum Brown, who found the very first T-Rex almost a century ago. He would turn up in the dusty Badlands sporting an elegant raccoon coat and polished boots. They said he could smell fossils. In 1902, Brown spotted a small bit of bone on a Montana hillside. The rock was so tough he had to blast it with dynamite. But what he revealed was astonishing: the remains of a gigantic carnivorous dinosaur. At the American Museum of Natural History, where Brown worked, they unpacked the stupendous fossils and dubbed the new find Tyrannosaurus Rex, the tyrant lizard king. Eventually, Brown found another specimen, while the museum assembled the first ever skeleton of a Tyrannosaurus. The legend of the killer T-Rex was born. Fossils are still shipped in from the field exactly as they were in Brown's day, encased in a protective coat of burlap and plaster. Beneath that coat, the fossils still lie embedded in fragments of rock. Freeing them is where the hard work of the Black Hills lab begins. It's a painstaking job. Careless preparation could destroy subtle surface details of the bones, such as marks of disease or injury. So the Institute has developed a new technique for eliminating the final layer of rock without damaging the bone. It's like a gentle form of sandblasting, but instead of sand, they use baking soda. The soda particles are softer than the fossil bone and won't damage it. But even with modern techniques, it can take a team of 20 people a year to clean a single large dinosaur. Of the hundreds of bones in a complete tyrannosaur, none are more intriguing than the skull. The team will spend hours poring over every nook and cranny, trying to get inside T-Rex's head and see what really made it the ultimate killing machine. It's 68 million years ago, and T-Rex is on the move. It's picked up the scent of its prey. But is it a mindless marauder or a cunning killer? Though we can't put ourselves inside the mind of T-Rex, we can get inside its fossilized skull. Neil Larson of the Black Hills Institute has studied the brain case and the subtle clues it reveals about T-Rex intelligence.
This is the inside of the brain case of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. By studying the different nerve endings and looking at the outside of the skull, we can see and figure out how large the brain case of the Tyrannosaurus Rex is. This is a cast of a brain from a juvenile Tyrannosaurus Rex. An adult T-Rex would have a brain about twice this size. Even though the Tyrannosaurus Rex had a large-sized brain, it was not as large as a human's. The purpose of the brain was to serve for reflexes, so it could hunt, so it could fight, so it could sleep and figure out if it was hungry, and for mating. But it did not have the mental capacity that it needed if it was to look at the stars and wonder what was going to happen next. It didn't have to appreciate good music. All it had to do was survive in a world of dinosaurs.
While T-Rex was no intellectual, its brain was larger than any of today's reptiles, And it was bigger than almost all other dinosaurs, like the plant eaters it tracked down. But just how well that brain could perceive the world around it is a matter of debate. Neil Larson thinks T-Rex had vision that allowed it to home in on its prey.
Tyrannosaurus Rex had large eyes and binocular vision, eyes that face forward. Unlike plant eaters whose eyes were off to the side, Tyrannosaurus Rex eyes looked straight ahead at what it was after, just like that of eagles and like that of the world's greatest predators, humans. It could follow its prey, and it also had depth perception, so it knew exactly what distance the prey was.
Other scientists aren't so sure T-Rex could see in 3D. While its eyes did face forward, its deep snout may have limited the overlap in vision needed for 3D. But one thing no one argues about is the effectiveness of its teeth, 60 of them in an average skull, and longer and stronger than those of any other dinosaur.
Well, we've always heard that the teeth of Tyrannosaurus Rex were knife-like or dagger-like and strongly serrated. Well, yes, they are serrated, and the serrations are used for cutting through the meat. They're round in cross-section, they're round in shape, so that as the tooth goes through the meat and meets the bone, it can punch right into the bone, thereby crushing it instead of, if it was flat, breaking off.
With its large brain and bone-crushing teeth, T-Rex was long thought to be the most fearsome killer that ever lived. But a new discovery may topple T-Rex from his throne. In 1993, in the Badlands of Argentina called Patagonia, a chance discovery turned up the remains of a predatory dinosaur that may be even bigger than T-Rex. It was found by car mechanic and fossil hunter Ruben Carolini. He lives near the little frontier town of Plaza Juncal, 700 miles southwest of Buenos Aires. While fossil hunting in his homemade dune buggy one day, he stumbled across a huge bone. At first, he thought it belonged to a giant plant-eating dinosaur and contacted paleontologist Rodolfo Correa at Plaza Juncal's local museum. Correa and a colleague inspected the bone and quickly realized it didn't belong to a plant eater, but to a giant carnivore. They named the great beast Giganotosaurus carolini in honor of its discoverer. This 2-foot bone comes from the creature's massive lower jaw. The complete skull is 6 feet long, the longest of any dinosaur ever found, and a foot longer than T-Rex's. In March 1996, less than 2/3 of the creature had been recovered. Parts of the jaw and tail, as well as the front arms and claws, were still buried, leaving many questions unresolved. So Correa and his crew of 5 set out on the final lap of their momentous search for the biggest meat eater of all. With you? Never passing up a chance to find more of his discovery, Carolini joins the expedition. Once they arrive at the site and set up their tents, the digging can start. Helping the team is visiting American dinosaur hunter Nate Murphy. On the first day, Correa's luck is in. The crew finds part of the skull called the premaxilla, a bone that holds Giganotosaurus's front teeth and forms its snout. It's an important find. Now Correa can piece together the dinosaur's face.
It's bigger than I thought.
It's kind of a Jimmy Durante of theropods.
Right.
Big.
Right.
Big nose.
It's the last missing piece from Giganotosaurus's 6-foot-long skull, and a face they won't forget in a hurry.
It definitely wouldn't have won any beauty contests. Would have made T-Rex look like a prom queen. The nasal bone would be this, in essence, to us. So we've got this big, ugly nasal processes running right down to the opening of the nose. You know, just gnarly, bumpy stuff. And then these huge teeth hanging out. I'll tell you, it'd be your worst nightmare. This thing is ugly.
After today, Korea unearthed what remained of Giganotosaurus, giving him important new insights into this previously unknown killer. Giganotosaurus was at least 3 tons heavier and 3 feet longer than the biggest tyrannosaur. Though at a glance it looks like T-Rex, there are enough differences to suggest they weren't closely related. Giganotosaurus had a smaller, narrower brain. Its razor-sharp teeth were adapted for slashing flesh, not crushing bone. With its thicker bones and massive tail, it may have been a more powerful fighter. But the two would never have battled face to face. Though both come from the Cretaceous period, 144 to 65 million years ago, Giganotosaurus lived in the early part, 30 million years before T-Rex's time. Giganotosaurus has emerged as a truly remarkable beast, a grotesque killer even larger than T-Rex. But perhaps Korea shouldn't be surprised by his creature's uniqueness. Dinosaurs, unlike any others, keep turning up in Argentina. The Argentine Museum of Natural History in Buenos Aires is a treasure house of strange and unique species from ancient Patagonia. For the past 30 years, it has been the home base of Argentina's most celebrated paleontologist, Jose Bonaparte. In 1985, he excavated the remains of a large meat-eating dinosaur. At about 25 feet in length, it was half the size of Giganotosaurus and not as old. It lived in the Middle Cretaceous period, about 100 million years ago. But as Bonaparte quickly realized, it was more bizarre than other carnivorous dinosaurs.
El dinosaurio más raro, más extraño que hemos encontrado.
This is the strangest dinosaur we have.
Que fue encontrado hace 10 años.
It was found 10 years ago in northern Patagonia.
Y que tiene.
The oddity about this dinosaur are these 2 front horns, along with these very carnivorous teeth.
A la presencia de dientes muy carnívoros.
This dinosaur also had a shorter snout than other meat-eating dinosaurs. It reminded Bonaparte of a bull, so he named the creature Carnotaurus, or carnivorous bull lizard. No other meat-eater has horns like Carnotaurus. Bonaparte thinks they weren't hunting weapons, but evolved for sexual display, like the antlers of stags. Perhaps male carnivores locked horns when they competed for females. Carnotaurus represents a bizarre offshoot of the meat-eater's family tree. But in Argentina, it's not just exotic branches that are found. The possible roots of the family tree have been discovered here, ancestors that would eventually give rise to the most famous killer of all time, T-Rex. Dinosaur hunters have long hoped to find traces of the earliest dinosaur. a creature that would be the common ancestor of all the later dinosaur groups, including the giant meat-eating theropods like T-Rex. To hunt for dinosaur origins, they come to Ishigualasto, the Valley of the Moon. The valley is a gigantic depression in the foothills of the Andes in Argentina. Here, the ancient land surfaces are stacked one on top of another, like pages in a book. Fierce winds batter the parched cliffsides and mesa tops, slowly eating away the old land surfaces, exposing each page of the book and the fossils buried millions of years ago. These rocks date from the Triassic period, from 245 to 210 million years ago. This was the age when the first dinosaurs appeared. In the Valley of the Moon, Argentine scientists uncovered fossils of one such early dinosaur, which they named Herrerasaurus. The creature was around 10 feet long and must have weighed about 500 pounds. Though primitive, it possessed many features seen in the major theropod dinosaurs that followed. Paleontologist Bill Sill of San Juan University has been studying Herrerasaurus for 25 years.
Herrerasaurus, a primitive carnivorous dinosaur. You have the high, narrow skull, big eyes, and notice that all of the strength of the muscles of the jaw were straight over the teeth, which meant that all of the muscle power went directly to the teeth. And on top of that, he had a free forelimb. He was bipedal, so his forelimbs were used for grasping, raking, tearing apart the prey. Look at the size of those claws.
Before the time of Herrerasaurus, most large land animals were low-slung creatures that resembled crocodiles. Herrerasaurus looked entirely different. Changes in the structure of its ankles and hips allowed it to walk upright, a bipedal body plan that was to reappear in all later meat-eating dinosaurs.
The femur, that's the leg bone. Now look at that, the knee joint and the hip joint allowed him to stand completely vertical, which means he was not only bipedal, but all of his legs were rotated under the body. That means speed and agility. So this fellow would have been like a two-legged tiger going across the plains hunting prey.
With Herrerasaurus, the earliest forms of the killer dinosaur's deadly weapons had appeared. Over millions of years, its descendants evolved their own unique killing strategies. In northwestern Montana, they found the remains of one such descendant. And while they're uncertain of the exact identity, it looks like it could be Velociraptor, a small but chillingly efficient killer. The discovery's been made by an unusual dinosaur hunting team, a family named the Linsters. Each summer, the Linsters pack up their camper and drive out to a ranch for a unique kind of vacation. Who needs the beach when you have your very own dinosaur quarry? Cliff Linster and his family have no formal training in paleontology, but they become skilled at identifying fossils and are meticulous in their field methods. Cliff has taught the boys how to dig fossils like professionals. After the topsoil is removed, they uncover bones with ice picks and brushes, while applying acetone hardener to fortify them against breakage. The work is difficult, but there's quite a kick in uncovering dinosaur bones that haven't seen the light of day in 80 million years. And occasionally, like most families, they can't resist a chance to joke around. Like the time Wesley found the skeleton of a ground squirrel. After carefully painting it black, he told Dad it was a dinosaur bone.
One day,
our second boy came to me with this little bone here. We looked it over, we couldn't identify it, and from there we went to the Black Hills Institute, and the first guy we showed it to there got a big smile on his face and dug out his book and said, "Oh, this is a squirrel bone." It is. It's a ground squirrel, common gopher, painted with magic marker, super glued. Good job of faking.
But practical jokes can backfire. A few days later, Wesley uncovered the real bones of a small dinosaur.
We came up to move some overburden, and I got down a little too deep, and I rolled out a dirt clod, and it had the small jaw in there that I could tell was carnivore after I looked at it for a while. So after I found that, I ran down the hill and found my mom.
When he first told his mother, she didn't believe him. She thought he was just playing another joke. But soon it was clear that Wesley had found the remains of Velociraptor, or a very close relative. Even more exciting, the bones were tiny. This was a baby dinosaur. It was no more than 3 feet long and 18 inches tall, about the size of an eagle. Because the bones were so immature, it was hard to be sure of the exact species. The Lindsters named it Bambi. When the family showed the bones to paleontologist David Burnham, he instantly recognized the importance of their discovery.
Pound for pound, this little guy was dynamite. And these bones are so important because the fossil record for small theropods is very rare because the bones are lightly built and therefore don't usually preserve very well.
Bambi and its parents are part of a group of dinosaurs from the early Cretaceous, commonly called raptors. Lightly built, they probably leaped feet first at prey, using their stiff tails for balance and their retractable toe claw to rip open flesh with a single stroke. Though little is known about their behavior, one site revealed 5 skeletons buried together, hinting at a frightening idea. These quick and deadly dinosaurs may have run and hunted in packs. With Bambi, we may learn even more about raptors. The Lindsters managed to find 90% of the skeleton, making it quite possibly the most complete of its kind ever found. The Lindster family's discovery is raising other questions. Appropriately, they concern dinosaur family life. How was delicate young Bambi cared for and protected? Who caught its food? A provocative answer is emerging from a collection of scarred bones found by a Sherlock Holmes of dinosaur sleuthing. This is Como Bluff in Wyoming, a fossil gold mine ever since railroad workers found the first bones here in 1877. Today, it's the favorite hunting ground of Bob Bacher and his wife Constance. Bob is the wild man of dinosaur experts, an original thinker whose provocative theories continue to shake up the field. Now he's reconstructing the family life of carnivorous dinosaurs. The work began when Bob opened a new site just below the ridge at Como Bluff. It turned out to contain a curious mixture of bones from different kinds of large dinosaurs.
This is Nail Quarry, named for an antique nail found on the surface. Most of the time I have to say some amateur student found an important site, but this is one of the few places I can say, I found this. When we started digging in, there were fun things. There were giant carnivorous dinosaurs, meat eaters, some as big as T-Rex, but 60 million years earlier. Well, that's kind of interesting.
For most of that time, in the Jurassic period, the landscape here was a floodplain without any major rivers or streams. Not the kind of environment where dinosaurs would gather, or where their bones would usually survive. Something else must have brought them to Como Bluff. But what? As Bacher dug into the quarry, the mystery deepened. He found the bones of more and more different kinds of dinosaurs, both plant eaters and meat eaters.
There are 4 species of giant carnivorous dinosaurs here. That's interesting. There's a rich fauna of meat eaters. but they were victims. As we dug the bones of these giant carnivores, we found they'd been chewed. These weren't eaters, they were eatees. And they were chewed, they were gnawed.
Tooth marks were clearly visible on the bones, so it looked like nail quarry had been a feeding site. Dinosaur victims had been killed elsewhere, dragged back, and eaten here.
Another weird thing about this quarry is there are no small animals at all. The smallest animal is a baby Diplodocus at 5 tons, 10,000 pounds. That's the smallest animal. Well, whoever dragged the carcasses here didn't want small bodies. They didn't want little prey. They wanted big hunks of meat and bone and gristle. They wanted the haunch of a brontosaur, the shoulders of a stegosaur, the tail of a megalosaur, big pieces.
So who was doing the killing, dragging, and eating? Besides the chewing marks, there were other clues scattered among the bones.
Meat-eating dinosaurs leave calling cards when they chew. They had teeth like crocodiles or sharks. They'd break off a tooth, a new tooth would grow in. They'd break off their teeth where they were chewing their prey, their carcasses. This is a carnivore tooth. It's got wear at the tip where the enamel was ground off. It was chewing bones.
Scattered among the assortment of bones at Nail Quarry, Bakker found teeth that belonged to just one type of dinosaur.
And there's only one species of predator, just one particular species of allosaur, no one else. So that was an allosaur lair.
Weighing almost 2 tons and stretching over 30 feet, allosaurs were among the Jurassic's most formidable hunters. If Bob is right, they killed their victims first, then dragged them back to Nail Quarry. But why? Among the teeth Bakker found were tiny ones like this, from the smallest allosaur ever found. A baby that probably weighed just 1 pound, fresh out of the egg. According to Bakker, that's why allosaurs drag their prey here, to feed their helpless infants.
Here is the shoulder blade of a brontosaur. And cutting across it are tooth marks, left by carnivores who were gnawing away the flesh. Those are pretty deep. That's from a medium-size allosaur, maybe 1,000 pounds. But here are wee little ones. Those are so small, they only match those tiny baby hatchling allosaurs. So the scene is there's mother and half-grown allosaurs chewing, and over at this corner, the little baby.
Before Bakker's discovery, nest sites of only plant-eating dinosaurs had been found, together with evidence of parental care. But many paleontologists assumed that carnivorous dinosaurs were solitary killers who didn't look after their young. Now, bones from Nail Quarry are changing that view. Even the fiercest dinosaurs, it seems, became caring parents when they got back home.
If you're a baby lion, you're not fed rabbits. You're not fed chipmunks. You're fed hunks of zebra. You're a baby lion. Mother brings you a piece of zebra, big piece. But if you were a baby allosaur right here in this part of Wyoming, you wouldn't be fed a little chipmunk-sized dinosaur, and you didn't have to hunt for yourself. You just had to wait for mom, maybe your aunt, maybe dad, to drag in the latest 2-ton hunk of meat, and then you could sit right here and gnaw to your little baby allosaur's heart's content.
In his reconstruction of the allosaur feeding site, Bakker's passion for understanding how dinosaurs behaved is evident. All paleontologists ultimately strive in their own way for a similar goal: to reconstruct the lost world of dinosaur behavior. With 5 T-Rexes under their belt, the team at Black Hills Institute are in a unique position to test ideas about how carnivorous dinosaurs lived and died. This is Stan, a T-Rex discovered in South Dakota in 1992, the second most complete skeleton ever found. Stan is a world traveler, newly returned from a tour of Japan. While he's on the road, Stan looks more like a giant erector set than a dinosaur. That's because he's designed to be taken apart and fit into a collection of wooden crates, then slotted back together when he reaches his destination. Each bone is the original fossil. Black Hills has used all of its knowledge of T-Rexes to restore and mount Stan. Anatomically, he's probably the most up-to-date version of a T-Rex in the world today. Early reconstructions depicted tyrannosaurs as portly creatures, barely able to support their own weight and dragging their tails on the ground. But assembling recent specimens like Stan has revealed how wrong those early views were. The mistakes go back to the days of Barnum Brown, who found the first T-Rexes in Montana almost a century ago. When he brought them back to the American Museum in New York, no one knew for sure how the bones should be mounted. The director, Henry Fairfield Osborne, did the best he could with the little information then available. After considering several alternatives, he finally posed the first tyrannosaur upright, with its tail and feet planted on the ground. This is the T-Rex that stood in the American Museum until 1990, scaring generations of children and inspiring Hollywood producers.
The land unknown. Could man have survived in the dinosaur age of mighty monsters? Shudder at history's most ferocious killer, Tyrannosaurus Rex.
But according to Black Hills Institute's Neil Larson, the museum got it all wrong.
80 years ago, when scientists mounted the first Tyrannosaurus Rex, they mounted it like this toy, and like they did all toys ever since then. They mounted it standing on two legs, resting on its tail for a balance. They couldn't figure out how T-Rex, being a bipedal animal, could stand on the two legs without falling flat on his face.
But the more complete Tyrannosaur skeletons unearthed in the 1990s are helping dinosaur experts rethink T-Rex anatomy. It seems they had no problem balancing on their back legs and didn't drag their tails. A V-shaped bone straddled the vertebra and limited the tail's up and down motion. Locked high off the ground, it counterbalanced the creature's massive head.
And with that counterbalance, he did not fall flat on his face. He could stand, he could walk, he could run at breakneck speed, chasing down his prey with that tail stretched out right behind him.
And so was born a new T-Rex, the sprinting killer, with a top speed of 40 miles per hour, according to Larson. But could this be just another T-Rex myth? Could T-Rex really sprint up to 40 miles per hour, as its revised posture suggests? To find out, you might come to Montana and look up Matt Smith, a renowned dinosaur sculptor. Smith became curious about T-Rex's mobility when the Museum of the Rockies in Bozeman asked him to design and build a new T-Rex. In 1990, the museum had unearthed the most complete skeleton known at that time and wanted to show visitors what it would have looked like in the flesh.
In sculpting this rendition of the T-Rex, I was very fortunate. We were able to lay out all the bones, take a look at the relationship between the ribs, the vertebrae, everything.
To ensure his model was accurate, Smith had to measure each part of the creature, every bone, tooth, and claw. Then he had to decide how much flesh to put on the bones. It wasn't just guesswork. Although the Tyrannosaur's muscles are long gone, each has left its mark on the bones. The larger the muscle, the bigger the scar.
You need to look at the bones. And on the surface of the fossil, There's a correlation between the force the muscle exerts onto the surface of the bone and the scarring it leaves behind. By looking at that, you can help identify the placement of the muscle, the size, and it'll help give you a more accurate rendition of the animal.
With the model fleshed out and complete, Smith sent out copies for other dinosaur researchers to study. One reached paleontologist Jim Farlow of Indiana Purdue University, who wanted to use the model to investigate T-Rex's top running speed. According to Farlow, the creature's speed would be limited by its weight, so he used the model in a water displacement experiment to estimate how much the T-Rex weighed when it was alive. His calculations showed that it would have weighed 6 to 8 tons. If a T-Rex that heavy ran faster than around 20 miles per hour, Farlow believes the consequences would be fatal.
You've got an animal, a really big, heavy animal, the size of a small truck, going at this kind of speed in these certain scenarios. It can't stop itself.
What if T-Rex stumbled or tripped while sprinting at high speed?
The head alone coming down from 15 feet in the air, that would be like taking a really big watermelon and dropping it from a second or third story window. I mean, the impact, the deceleration would sort of make it blow up like a water balloon.
Next, its body would be crushed under its own weight as it crashed to the ground.
Internal bleeding, broken bones, punctured lungs. I just don't think it likely that the animal would have engaged in that kind of activity, even if the leg bones had been capable of supporting it. The risk strikes me as just too great.
Not everyone accepts Farlow's view, but a T-Rex running at even 20 miles an hour would be terrifying enough. Though tripping may have been disastrous for T-Rex, it wasn't the only danger large carnivorous dinosaurs faced. As scientists scrutinize the bones of meat-eaters, the truly violent nature of their world is appearing. At the Black Hills Institute, dinosaur hunter Terry Wentz examined Sue before she was locked away by the FBI. He recalls injuries he found in her bones.
Well, Tyrannosaurus Rex had a very violent, hard life. I mean, they fought a lot, and we can tell that because of the things we found with, like Sue, for instance, the Tyrannosaurus Rex from Faith area. When I was working on the rib, one of the ribs had a big mass of extra bone growth on it. Real weird looking. It didn't look like a rib at all. It had just a big mass of bone on it, extra bone, from an injury. Way down inside of that injury was a piece of Tyrannosaurus Rex tooth. That rib had been bitten into by another T-Rex. And she also had another very interesting injury that astounds scientists when they see it. That is, she had a broken leg. And Sue survived that injury. It actually healed.
With a broken leg, Sue could not have hunted for food. Perhaps a mate fed her while she convalesced. Could a fearsome T-Rex also be a kind partner? Maybe, but in the end, it was another tyrannosaur that caused Sue's death.
The last injury that Sue had didn't heal. She was literally bitten in the back of the head by another T-Rex, and it killed her. He bit in the back, crushed her skull on top, and just ripped out the lower jaw. It was just ripped right out, and you can kind of tell it looked like the flesh on the front of the jaw actually held it in place, but the whole back of the jaw was just ripped right out.
Some meat-eaters mutilated each other, perhaps while defending their turf. Others were wounded in pursuit of prey. Bob Bacher has found evidence that the mightiest hunters of the Jurassic period, the allosaurs, faced menacing adversaries.
This particular allosaur has a wound inflicted in a battle with a plant eater. It's right here. There's a deep, penetrating wound which went all the way through the bone and produced an open, oozing abscess that lasted for months. Every time this critter sat down, it probably went, whoo! Who made the wound? probably the rear end of a stegosaurus, where there are massive spikes. The crime probably went like this. Here's an allosaur, here's a stegosaur with spikes, and whack.
As the slow work of freeing their secrets from the rock continues, the true lives of the meat-eating dinosaurs are coming to light. While there's no doubt they were horrifying monsters, scientists are discovering that they were like nearly all creatures that have inhabited Earth. They struggled in their own unique ways to survive, to feed themselves, to care for their young, and to protect their kind. As more new discoveries are made and more bones interpreted, the killer dinosaurs are becoming more fascinating than ever. Dinosaurs ruled the Earth for 150 million years, surviving, evolving, flourishing. Then mysteriously, they vanished. To find out why, scientists search the void of outer space. They comb the hot sands of the desert. And they plumb the depths of the ocean. Some believe the answer is locked up in chunks of amber. Everywhere they look, they're finding compelling clues about why the Earth was once ruled by dinosaurs. And then there were none. 65 million years ago, the world was teeming with dinosaurs. But then an unimaginable disaster happened. A giant asteroid came screaming toward Earth at 60,000 miles per hour. It burst through the atmosphere and smashed into the planet. Fiery debris was thrown thousands of miles, causing death and destruction. Smoke and dust formed a giant cloud that enveloped the Earth, blotting out the sun and drenching the land with lethal acid rain. The planet was plunged into icy darkness. Photosynthesis stopped. Vegetation withered. In the gloom, plant-eating dinosaurs starved to death. The meat-eaters soon followed. In one swift, terrible catastrophe, the dinosaurs' 150 million-year reign came to an end. It's a compelling story and a popular notion. But is that the way it really happened? Many scientists believe it's only part of the story. They feel that an asteroid impact alone couldn't have caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. Their quest for a hidden lethal factor behind the extinction has led them to look in the most unlikely places, even the bottom of the ocean. Today, a research team is heading toward the coast of Mexico on board Juárez Resolution. Once an oil drilling ship, now converted into the world's biggest and most technologically sophisticated floating lab. University of Rhode Island oceanographer Haraldur Sigurdsson is taking his team close to the site of the asteroid impact, now partially buried beneath the sea. He's convinced that the only way the blast could have wiped out the dinosaurs was if it struck extremely rare terrain. To prove it, he's searching for something peculiar in the sediment where it hit. Something that made the effects of the explosion more deadly to the dinosaurs than the impact itself. The team will use the ship's massive drill probe to bring up narrow columns or cores of sediment from the ocean floor. Each core consists of dozens of seabed layers that accumulated gradually over millions of years.
We're planning to drill at a number of sites in the Caribbean where we will recover cores from the sea floor about a mile down that will provide us new information about the process of the impact and the environmental effects of this great meteorite impact.
Aboard are 10 state-of-the-art laboratories where the scientists will analyze the chemistry of the rocks and sand in the cores.
Boundary layer clay in it.
There's a lot of work ahead, but when they finish, Sigurdsson may finally have the answer to the dinosaurs' demise. It's a mystery scientists have been trying to figure out ever since dinosaurs were discovered. British naturalist Richard Owen coined the word dinosaur in 1842 and also came up with the first theory for why they died out. He believed that in the age of dinosaurs, there was a depletion of oxygen. The dinosaurs survived because they were like sluggish reptiles. Then somehow oxygen levels rose, favoring the faster-moving mammals, and the dinosaurs went extinct. But Owen's theory was little more than guesswork, and since Darwin had yet to publish his theory of evolution, most of Owen's contemporaries believed in a simpler notion, that the dinosaurs were wiped out by the biblical flood. As science progressed, geologists found evidence of numerous great floods and catastrophes in Earth's history, floods that the dinosaurs survived. At the turn of the century, another idea emerged, that the dinosaurs, like all other extinct creatures, were meant to die out and give way to more advanced forms. Throughout the 20th century, many theories were bounced back and forth. However, all had one thing in common with earlier ideas. They couldn't be supported by hard evidence. Then, in 1978, in a limestone gorge in central Italy, a geologist named Walter Alvarez made a discovery that took the dinosaurs' extinction out of the realm of guesswork. Alvarez noticed a strange, thin, dark line of clay between two layers of sediment, dating back roughly 65 million years. Below the unusual clay is limestone from the Cretaceous, a period in which the dinosaurs were thriving. Above it is the Tertiary period, when all the dinosaurs and many other life forms disappeared from the fossil record. Because the layer divides these two geologic periods, it's known as the KT boundary. The C was changed to K because C had already been used to describe another geological time period. Alvarez brought a sample of the thin clay layer back to the lab for analysis. There, his team discovered something strange. It had over 30 times the normal concentration of a rare metal called iridium. Stranger still, other researchers soon reported the same clay layer at sites around the world, always loaded with iridium. Then, with the help of his father, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, and other colleagues, Alvarez came up with a daring new theory. Since iridium is rare on Earth's surface, but common in asteroids, he deduced that 65 million years ago, a 6-mile-wide asteroid slammed into the Earth and vaporized, showering the globe with clouds of iridium-rich dust and other debris. Because this phenomenon coincided with the extinction of the dinosaurs, they developed the now well-known scenario for the dinosaurs' sudden death by a killer asteroid. But critics were quick to point out that iridium at that level isn't found only in asteroids, it's also in the Earth's core. So maybe the dust clouds spewed from volcanic eruptions. Scientists have found evidence of extraordinary lava flows in India that coincide with the dinosaur extinction. But it's uncertain whether the eruptions were vast enough to cause worldwide extinction. Meanwhile, if Alvarez and his supporters wanted to prove their case, they needed to find a huge crater somewhere on Earth's surface. According to their calculations, it should be about 112 miles in diameter and 65 million years old. Soon, several candidates were spotted. One in Canada, another in Iowa. But the Canadian crater was too old, and neither crater was big enough. Then, in 1990, the elusive crater was finally discovered just off the coast of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, mostly beneath the Caribbean Sea. It was named the Chicxulub crater. Though the crater had been found, a crucial question remained. Was the impact alone enough to cause the extinction of the dinosaurs and half the life on Earth? The team aboard the Juarez Resolution is out to prove that it wasn't. Their leader, Haraldur Sigurdsson, thinks there was more to it. His team is here in the Caribbean Sea to explore sediments from the KT boundary that surround the submerged Chicxulub crater. They're hoping to find evidence that the rock layers hit by the asteroid were rich in sulfur, which would have worsened the aftermath of the explosion. The research ship will drill not into the underwater crater itself, but into several spots on its periphery. When the asteroid hit, it first threw out dense, fiery rock and debris for thousands of miles before the finer particles floated into the atmosphere. The heavier ejected material at the KT boundary is what interests Sigurdsson.
One of the objectives of our expedition is to drill into the seafloor in the Caribbean in order to recover material from the boundary layer or from the deposit that was ejected by this great impact.
The drill team pushes a pipe thousands of feet long through a hole in the bottom of the ship. On the end of the pipe is a drill bit with super hard tungsten carbide teeth that can chew through rock. A sonar beacon sends sound waves to the ship, guiding the drill into a cone already set on the seafloor. To reach a mile down, they have to assemble the pipe on board, linking 100-foot sections together one by one. Sand and rock layers beneath the ocean floor get pushed up the pipe to form a core that the scientists will study. To retrieve just one sample, it takes a total of 4 hours. When they pull the drill back to the surface, the core will have the same layers in the same order as the undersea rock itself. But the KT boundary layer they're looking for is thin, making it extremely difficult to locate beneath a mile of water. Will the team find it? There's no way of knowing until they get the core into the lab. The team aboard the Juarez Resolution anxiously awaits the retrieval of a core containing sediment from the seafloor. If it holds the crucial KT boundary layer, they'll begin to look for evidence that the killing power of the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs was amplified by its collision with sulfur-rich rocks. After the core is recovered and cut into manageable sections, it's sliced down the middle at the splitting station. Half will be saved for later study. The other half goes directly to the onboard lab.
Well, see what we got here. Looks like a great core.
Now, Haraldur Sigurdsson and his team can examine the core to see if it contains the dark clay boundary layer. The drilling was a success.
If this is the tertiary limestone,
The layer is right there in the middle of the core.
in order to pin that down.
Well, we need to get a sample from somewhere down in here. We should see. It might be in the upper part of this.
One end is from the Cretaceous period, when the dinosaurs were still alive. The other end is from the Tertiary, after they died out. And in between is the KT layer that marks the dinosaurs' last days on Earth. But Sigurdsson leaves nothing to chance. He has to be sure that he's really found debris thrown from the impact. For that, he'll study a sample under the microscope to look for the unmistakable signs of an asteroid explosion. The energy of such a blast is so enormous, it melts the underlying rock. Globs of liquid rock are flung into the sky. The molten rock cools as it falls to Earth. Some turns into tiny glass beads, or tektites, which fall like rain all around the Earth. At the same time, the blast shatters grains of the mineral quartz in a distinctive way. It's called shocked quartz. Under the microscope, they find the shocked quartz. It's clearly sheared and shattered by the force of the explosion. Then they find the distinctive glass beads, the tektites. The two discoveries prove they pinpointed the ejected material. Now Sigurdsson and his team can begin to analyze the tektites for sulfur content. Careful chemical analysis later shows that Sigurdsson found what he wanted. The tektites contain a high level of sulfur, indicating the asteroid struck sediment that was rich in a mineral called gypsum. According to Sigurdsson, the energy of the impact would have vaporized the gypsum into a huge cloud of sulfur dioxide. As it spread through the upper atmosphere, it changed into sulfuric acid. Particles of the sulfuric acid acted like trillions of lenses, reflecting the sunlight away from the Earth. The deadly veil would have blocked out sunlight to a greater degree than anyone imagined. For an entire year, the world must have been dark and frozen, leaving no chance for the dinosaurs to survive. It was an incredible twist of fate that the asteroid hit where it did. It was like a bomb hitting a powder keg. Even more astonishing, less than 1% of the Earth's crust has this kind of sulfur-rich rock. If the asteroid had hit almost anywhere else, the dinosaurs might have survived. In the ship's lab, the team finds evidence of the impact's effect on creatures that lived in the sea, where apparently even more life was wiped out than on land.
Here in the lab on ship.
University of Rhode Island paleontologist Stephen DeHunt put limestone from the core under a microscope.
If you take a look at the rock that's below the impact layer here, you see the skeletons of small animals that floated around in the surface ocean eating phytoplankton. This rock is composed almost entirely of their skeletons. We have, in this picture, probably 8 or 9 different varieties, same size of
But just a centimeter above the impact layer, a totally different world appears.
We see a rock that's just got a few scattered, lonely little individuals here and there. These three dots right here comprise the skeleton of one of the few species that actually survived the impact event. Before, the ocean was filled with all these other varieties. After the event, nothing left.
So an ocean teeming with life suddenly became barren and empty. One cosmic mishap forever changed life on Earth. To Sigurdsson, it all adds up to proof that a massive asteroid blasted into a bed of sulfur-rich sediments and wiped out ancient life on Earth in a flash. It's clear that the dinosaurs didn't stand a chance in the bitter aftermath of the impact. But exactly how close did the asteroid come to destroying all life on Earth? Clues that reveal the magnitude of the devastation are buried in the bleak badlands of North Dakota. Here, summer temperatures reach over 100 degrees in the shade, and fierce storms whip up the sand. But scientists flock here because of its well-preserved record of the end of the dinosaur age. Today, a team is setting out to learn more about that record. Leading them is Kirk Johnson, a paleobotanist from the Denver Museum of Natural History. He's here to look at the fossil record of plants. An asteroid powerful enough to kill the dinosaurs would have also destroyed a tremendous amount of plant life. In the rocks, he has little trouble finding the thin, dark clay layer that marks the impact, the KT boundary.
This little thin layer here, it's about ½ an inch thick, it's dark gray to black, appears as though it was deposited in less than a year. It looks like it's the fallout layer from an asteroid impact that occurred in Mexico.
With the impact layer identified, Johnson and his crew search for plant fossils. To him, they can actually reveal more than dinosaur bones.
The plants that grew with the last dinosaurs actually tell you a lot more about the late Cretaceous period than the dinosaurs themselves, because plants are a much more integral part of the landscape. When you walk outside, for instance, what do you see? You don't see lots of animals running around. You see vegetation, plants, trees, grass.
To get a clear picture of what happened to the vegetation at the KT boundary, the team must find a wide sample of plant fossils.
We have to set the stage. We have to build the late Cretaceous world before we destroy it. And the destruction of that late Cretaceous world is what happened right at the KT boundary. And what we're trying to do here is reconstruct the vegetation, the landscape, the environments of the late Cretaceous, understand its climate. Then what we do is climb up the hill, we cross the KT boundary, we do the same thing in the early tertiary period, and we compare before and after.
The team first works in sediments from the late Cretaceous period, the time just before the impact. They'll soon find out what kind of landscape the dinosaurs roamed in and what happened to it after the asteroid hit. By finding plant fossils from below the KT boundary layer and comparing them to what's left above, paleobotanist Kirk Johnson and his team hope to discover the destructive power of the asteroid that caused the dinosaurs' extinction. As the soft rocks from the late Cretaceous layer are pried open, they reveal a variety of fossilized leaves. Impressions of plants that once provided food and shade for the dinosaurs are exposed for the first time in millions of years. Most are broadleafed, like relatives of avocado, cinnamon, and lotus plants. All are subtropical species. Even a palm tree turns up.
This is a 66 million year old palm frond. So we're looking at a fossil that was a tree 66 million years ago, and that means that 66 million years ago, North Dakota wasn't cold in the winters. It was warm in the winters, and it was warm in the summers. It was a subtropical climate.
In the final days of the dinosaurs, this part of North Dakota was a lush forest. And the soft sandstone the fossils are found in tells Johnson that a stream once ran through this area. The fossils formed when leaves dropped into the stream and were buried by sand. Over time, the stream dried up and sandy layers slowly turned to rock, while minerals entered into the leaves and turned them into fossils. What's left millions of years later is a record of the once green and steamy landscape that dinosaurs lived in. But then the asteroid hit, and everything changed.
After the boundary, the plant species diversity plummets. It's a real barren wasteland up there. I mean, it's still forests, but the forests have 5 or 6 different kinds of plants. Down here in the Cretaceous, 60 or 70 species of plants.
Having collected more than 20,000 fossil leaves from above and below the KT boundary, Johnson calculates that 80% of the plant life here disappeared after the impact. Proof that the asteroid wiped out not just the dinosaurs, but entire ecosystems. Still, a mystery remains. Many small creatures made it through the crisis. Unlike dinosaurs, their fossils appear above the KT boundary.
We find our crocodiles, alligators, turtles, snakes, lizards, and mammals, and birds, frogs, things like that. But all small animals, and one of the things that all small animals share, besides their small body size, is they have pretty large populations. So there's a lot more mice than there are elephants, for instance. And so that's one of the things that probably made the dinosaurs vulnerable, was the fact that they were large animals, and as a result had probably relatively small population size.
So, does the solution simply lie in the large numbers of little animals, guaranteeing that some would survive the harsh aftermath of the impact? Or was there something else going on? Even today, the puzzle of the dinosaurs' disappearance remains unsolved. Scientists still bitterly dispute the cause. The asteroid theory may be popular, but many don't accept it. By probing further, they've found clues hinting at other agents of death and offer explanations as to why some creatures survived. At the Tate Museum in Casper, Wyoming, one of paleontology's most original thinkers, Bob Bakker, has devised his own solution by looking at the big picture.
We dinosaur scientists have a KT fixation. There are conferences about the KT, there are books about the KT, there are TV programs about the KT. That's a bit of a mistake, because if you want to know why the dinosaurs died at the end of the Cretaceous, you got to put them in context. That wasn't the only ecosystem collapse. There were 5 or 10 or 15 others. You've got to study the KT by comparing it to the end of the Jurassic, and the end of the Triassic, and the end of the Permian, and the extinctions that hit animals long after the Cretaceous. Put the KT in context, and then you'll find out who killed T-Rex.
Besides the dinosaurs, there have actually been at least 5 mass extinctions throughout the history of our world. In fact, extinction seems to be the rule. Many scientists agree that 90% of all creatures that have ever lived are now extinct. Studying these mass extinctions, Bakker found that they all had something in common. He uses the Jurassic extinction as an example.
At the end of the Jurassic, this system collapsed. The top predators, the allosaurs, went extinct. Their prey, the brontosaurs, were nearly totally exterminated. The plant-eating stegosaurs became very rare. In the oceans, there were extinction. What did it? The pattern of dying is the same you see at the KT boundary, the end of the Cretaceous. In fact, every time there's an extinction on land, it happens the same way. The victim profile is the same. It's the big active predators and the big active plant eaters who die. There would be extinctions after the KT. There were extinctions before the Jurassic, and all of them have the same MO, modus operandi. You want to know why the allosaurs went extinct? You have to find the serial killer that attacks the land ecosystem.
What caused the large dinosaurs to die at the end of both periods? According to Bakker, every extinction has coincided with a drop in global sea levels. This left land bridges connecting previously isolated continents. Dinosaurs that were living on a single landmass could then easily spread from one continent to another, but they carried with them latent diseases from their own habitats. When they came in contact with groups of dinosaurs from new habitats, diseases would be transmitted. Without immunities to new diseases, one group would be killed off by an epidemic. Eventually, entire populations would collapse. But what about the smaller animals? According to Bakker, it was easy for large dinosaurs to roam long distances across land bridges, but difficult for small animals. Even a shallow river could block their progress. With the big dinosaurs gone, niches opened up for those who hung on. In the hills of Como Bluff, Wyoming, Bakker has found evidence of survivors of the Jurassic extinction, which shows a similar pattern to the extinction at the KT boundary.
The extinction of dinosaurs at the end of the Jurassic was an opportunity for other species. If you lived in fresh water, if you were a turtle or a crocodile, you enjoyed the event. Turtle evolution speeds up during this extinction time. And if you were something else, too, you enjoyed the event. If you were small and hot-blooded and furry, if you belonged to our class, the class Mammalia, your evolution, too, took advantage of this opportunity.
So each time an extinction occurs, opportunities are created for the survivors. For another scientist, the surviving creatures at the KT boundary provide evidence for another novel theory of the dinosaurs' demise. He believes they weren't killed by a sudden asteroid explosion or disease, but by something in the air.
Now we can just gently tease.
Every summer, paleontologist Keith Rigby of Notre Dame University comes to the Badlands of Montana to hunt for fossils.
Okay.
What he finds here tells a different story of the dinosaurs' extinction 65 million years ago.
We're looking right here at what some say is the Cretaceous-Tertiary boundary, the black streak in the hillside right here. Some say this is where an asteroid hit the Earth, killed the dinosaurs, and everything was wiped out in more or less an afternoon. What we're finding out is that it's different than that.
The startling evidence he's found is the product of extensive teamwork. His students and volunteers aren't looking for prize museum specimens. Instead, their goal is to collect thousands of tiny bone fragments and teeth from many creatures. These will allow Rigby to build a broad picture of entire animal populations. He thinks tracing how these populations changed over time is the best way to study the cause of the extinction. It's demanding work. Every day, his diggers shovel out a couple of tons of dirt. But this is no ordinary dirt. It comes from near the KT boundary and contains hundreds of small fossils. Some of the sacks are filled with sediment taken from below the boundary in the Cretaceous period. And others contain sediment from above in the Tertiary. Each is carefully labeled.
Out of it now.
The team hauls the bags to a nearby reservoir.
Go to the right.
Here, the contents of the sacks are emptied into strainers. Each layer is kept separate. Next, it's time to head for the water. The water rinses away the sand and clay so that only hard material remains. Mostly rock turns up, but tiny broken up fossil bones and teeth are also revealed. Back on dry land, the rocky debris is picked out, leaving only fossils. Finding these fragments is the hardest part of the work. The trick is knowing which are rock and which are fossil. It takes a discerning eye. Though the fossils aren't much to look at, there are lots of them from a wide range of ancient animals. Not only dinosaurs, but alligators, salamanders, turtles, even tiny mammals. Back in the lab, the bones are sorted according to whether they were found in Cretaceous or Tertiary layers. Then they're organized by species. This will give Rigby an indication of which animals survived the KT boundary event and which did not.
No, I'm just putting it up there.
By tracing the fate of a wide variety of animals, Rigby creates a kind of snapshot of the entire living world in the Cretaceous and Tertiary periods. If there was a sudden catastrophe, it should show up as a clean break in the fossil record of many species at the KT boundary. But in fact, Rigby has found just the opposite. His work shows that the dinosaurs' extinction unfolded slowly, too slowly for an asteroid to have been the cause, and was already underway long before the asteroid hit. What's more, Rigby discovered that the smaller animals that became extinct around the time of the impact did so gradually, not in one single swift moment. At the same time, other species survived unharmed. And most surprising, small mammals began to diversify and expand. So even though Rigby accepts that an asteroid hit the Earth 65 million years ago, he's convinced that other factors have already set the wheels of extinction into motion. In fact, according to Rigby, the entire idea of sudden extinction as seen in the rocks is misleading. A layer marking an extinction may be less than an inch thick, but could represent tens of thousands of years.
We've seen extinctions in the geologic record time and time again. They appear sudden in the geologic record, but this is thousands, tens of thousands of years to take to accomplish this sudden geologic event. It takes time. It appears suddenly in the geologic record, but in our frame of reference, in our lifetimes, it's many generations, 10,000, 100,000 years, condensed to appear in the geologic record as sudden, but in reality is quite a long period of time.
But if dinosaur extinction was already underway long before the asteroid hit, what caused it? Rigby and his colleagues have come up with a clever and controversial answer. He thinks the solution lies inside chunks of amber. But this is no Jurassic Park. He isn't trying to bring back the dinosaurs. He wants to figure out why they disappeared. Amber is formed from hardened pine resin, a protective substance found on the surface of trees. The sticky resin flows down the tree, trapping bugs, dirt, even bubbles of air. After a while, it solidifies, preserving everything inside. In its fossilized form, it's called amber. Rigby's team has dug up chunks of amber preserved inside layers of rock from the Cretaceous, the last period of the dinosaurs. What they're looking for is amber chunks that have bubbles trapped inside. The bubbles, they believe, contain the air breathed by dinosaurs millions of years ago.
The clues that we found so far are incredibly interesting. We found that the atmosphere of the last of the dinosaurs is dramatically different than what we have now.
Could the air that dinosaurs breathed be different from today's? To find out, Rigby sends off the chunks of amber from his dig site to a lab in Denver. There, Gary Landis, a geochemist from the United States Geological Survey, will release the air from the bubbles for the first time in millions of years.
It's nothing short of phenomenal. It's really exciting. I mean, to hold a piece of a capsule that contains air from 60, 70, 100 million years ago is phenomenal. It's thoroughly thrilling.
But how can Landis be sure the air inside the bubbles is really that old? The ancient air may have leaked out, or new air leaked in. To show that amber is airtight, Landis devised a test. First, he placed samples of amber inside a nuclear reactor. The radiation converts potassium, found naturally in the amber, to the gas argon. Argon molecules are smaller than oxygen molecules and don't react with amber. So argon would escape from the amber more easily than oxygen. After monitoring the samples over a 3.5-year period, Landis found that the argon did not seep out, proving that amber is leak-proof. The next step is to release the air to analyze its contents and see what secrets it tells about the fate of the dinosaurs. To do that, Landis puts amber from the Cretaceous inside a vacuum chamber. The machine slowly cracks and crushes the amber, unlocking the ancient air trapped in the bubbles. He then uses a mass spectrometer to measure the different elements of the air and identify its components. The results show the air breathed by the dinosaurs during the Middle Cretaceous was made of the same elements as today's. But there was one crucial difference. The amount of oxygen was dramatically higher, at nearly 35%. The air we breathe contains only 21% oxygen. By analyzing air samples ranging from the early Cretaceous to today, Landis found that oxygen levels have gradually dropped. Landis and Rigby believe the drop in oxygen levels is what slowly killed off the dinosaurs, while sparing other creatures, including mammals. Their theory includes recent studies that suggest dinosaurs may have lacked a diaphragm and relied on their giant chest muscles to flex their rib cages in order to breathe. The method was inefficient, but in an oxygen-rich environment, that wasn't a problem. As the air became thinner, however, the dinosaurs began to suffocate.
They were unable to move as rapidly and unable to chase down and make their kills in food. They were less capable of migrating to new pastures for grazing, for feed. And you might even speculate that an animal having difficulty breathing enough to maintain its normal activity would be far less interested even in sex and reproduction.
Meanwhile, small mammals prospered. They had a muscular diaphragm beneath their lungs that helped them breathe the oxygen-depleted air. Smaller reptiles without diaphragms hung on because of their lower metabolic needs. But what caused the oxygen level to drop? According to Rigby and Landis, in the middle period of dinosaurs, the Jurassic, Earth's land masses were rapidly shifting, causing great volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. The violent activity pumped large amounts of carbon dioxide into the air, which the trees converted to oxygen. It was a lush, oxygen-rich environment in which the dinosaurs thrived. Then, in the Cretaceous, land mass movements slowly settled down. With fewer eruptions, less carbon dioxide was spewed. Plant life withered, and oxygen levels dropped. slowly the dinosaurs died out. By the time the asteroid hit, the damage was already done. While the oxygen theory is controversial, many paleontologists agree that slow-acting, complex environmental changes contributed to the dinosaurs' demise. Even so, it can't be denied that dinosaur remains vanish from the fossil record at the same place that marks an asteroid impact, and evidence continues to mount that links the two events. Vast craters that scar the Earth's surface show that debris from space has pummeled our planet more than once. Scientists who keep an eye on the far reaches of space consider the idea of a killer asteroid wreaking havoc on our planet as a very real threat, even today. Could the human race become just another statistic on the extinction chart? Could a giant asteroid come flying out of the sky and wipe humanity from the face of the Earth? Are we doomed to suffer the same fate as the dinosaurs? Some scientists are taking the threat seriously. At Kitt Peak Observatory near Tucson, Arizona, Jim Scotty is one of the astronomers who run a project called Space Watch. The team operates a telescope that keeps an eye out for asteroids and comets approaching Earth. Scotty has seen enough of them to be worried. To recognize impending disaster as early as possible, he bathes his telescope with liquid nitrogen to minimize distortion. The telescope automatically rotates throughout the night, constantly scanning the skies for asteroids or comets that might be headed our way. The view is recorded by a sensitive electronic camera attached to the telescope. The images are fed into a computer, which picks out the fast-moving asteroids against the background of stationary stars and planets.
On our computer screen, the slower-moving main-belt asteroids are indicated by flagging them with boxes and numbers indicating where the object is in the current image and was in the previous two images. Our computer software finds literally hundreds of main belt asteroids every night, but we're after the fast-moving asteroids that are potential Earth-crossing asteroids.
So the Space Watch team gets worried only if the computer tracks a rogue asteroid that's been kicked out of the main asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter and is heading toward Earth. They're finding about 3 a month. What are the chances we'll get hit? In fact, meteors, commonly known as shooting stars, hit us all the time. They're pieces of space debris smaller than an asteroid, but anything up to the size of a house will burn up in the atmosphere. A 100-foot asteroid strikes about once a century. That's what blew out Meteor Crater near Flagstaff, Arizona, 50,000 years ago. As for a 6-mile-wide dinosaur killer, fortunately, scientists think it's a rare event, maybe once every 100 million years. But there's another threat to worry about: comets. These icy masses don't orbit the sun in a well-defined belt like the asteroids do. Many swing far out to the edge of the solar system beyond Pluto. They're fast-moving, so they can appear out of deep space with relatively little warning.
An object the size of the dinosaur killers, something like 10 or 20 kilometers in diameter, would be visible to our telescope with our current technology probably for only about a year or two.
Astronomers only had a 16-month warning when fragments of comet Shoemaker-Levy were spotted heading toward Jupiter. In July 1994, their telescopes recorded the impacts. The biggest was equal to a 1 million megaton bomb, leaving an impact site the size of planet Earth. What could we do if we only had a few months' notice of such a cataclysmic threat? With present technology, there's not a lot we can do. There are plenty of ideas about how to defend ourselves, like sending a nuclear bomb into space to blow it up.
But no matter what you do, you don't want to blow the asteroid to smithereens. That's not going to help you, because instead, you're not going to vaporize the asteroid, you're going to make it into a big rubble pile. And it's still going to hit the Earth.
It may take a more subtle approach to nudge an asteroid out of the way, maybe using microwave beams or solar sails. The Space Watch scientists think we should be trying to solve the problem.
Dinosaurs lasted for well over 100 million years, and they endured at least one other big impact event. But during all that time, they never quite got around to building an asteroid deflection system. So look what it got them. It got them fossilized.
Even if humans had been around at the time of the dinosaurs to develop Star Wars technology, we might not have saved them. Though new evidence strongly suggests that an asteroid was the agent of death, the dinosaurs may have already been on the way out, endangered by millions of years of global change to which they couldn't adapt fast enough. Or perhaps they dropped in droves from disease. For now, the dinosaurs' extinction remains a compelling mystery. But scientists are learning more about the forces of nature that caused it. Maybe one day they'll put all the pieces together, and in the process, gain insight about our own future.